publications under the said book, Monographs Edited Criticism in Nigeria, the first to write on the history of art education in Nigeria, and this should be a standard. In 32 academic, cultural, and professional institutions within and outside Nigeria. He has assessed over 40 candidates for either professorship or associate professorship position in Nigeria. Professor Emeritus Ola is also the #1 critic of what he sees as the present wrong, inappropriate, destructive scientific research methodologies for out-subject educational Professor Emeritus Oloidi has created or coined the following words that have now been used beyond Nigeria: Zarian, Zarianists, Zarianism, Adrenic, Correctism, Aseptism, among others. Professor Oloidi was and is a consultant to the following bodies or organizations: Central Bank of Nigeria, 2008, National Gallery of Art, Abuja, 2007 to 2012, Leaders of People Forum Organization, Abuja, 2008 to 2012, Nigerian Copyright Council, now Commission, 1989 to 1995, Forerunner Publications, Abuja, 2001 to 2005, Society of Nigerian Artists, Professor Emeritus Oloidi, the art historian, the humorist, the academic, the intellectual, the scholar, the humanist, the artist critic, the teacher, and the art historian. I hereby present Professor Emeritus Oloidi.
Uninvited subjects hastily emerged at the same time. They rushed at the same time, giving me confusion. Appealing for thematic attention. The reason for this was easily understandable. For instance, having worked on or studied the life and professionality of this pietist or sage, known as Aina Onabolu, very reasonably over the years, it is just proper to get a theme or topic that will not be an academic repetition, intellectual rehearsal, or art historical boredom and monotony. I have therefore decided here to have a pact with the above title, that is, Aina Onabolu, pioneer and generalismo of Western art traditions in Africa. And that's what I'm going to shock you today. Making it necessary, therefore, to utmost emphatically present only those Western experiences that Onabolu pioneered in Africa. The first was drawing. The oldest and first known drawings in European style and with European materials in Nigeria and even in Africa were produced by Onabolu in 1892. I have the drawing. When he was a pupil at St. Saviour's Primary School, Yebode, his hometown, where he was born on September 13, 1882, to a polygamous family of Jacob and Oshun Gente Onabolu, his parents. These were drawings of colonial hat, middle, boot or shoe, pestle, and mortar. In fact, you could see he put the panel yam inside the mortar. I have photocopies of all this, but you will never see anywhere you go, not even in Accra. something is interesting. This was part of the visual aids. Because he was the only one doing this in the school. Nobody was doing it anywhere in Africa. The only art we had, crafts, traditional art forms of our people. In one of his writings, he was drawing, he drew a needle, and instead of putting a dot to symbolize the whole of the motif, he put a circle. And one of his teachers, I don't know whether I mentioned his name here, saw it. He said, He said, a camel can pass through the eye of this your needle. But later, when he got to Caxton School, Lagos, he put it. Anyway, the works were described by one of his teachers, Mr. Adelaja, one of his teachers, as, quote, full of wonder and unfamiliar white man's wizardry, unquote. Also 2 years later, Onabolu's headmaster reacted thus when Dr. K. Randall wanted Aina to follow him to Lagos to continue his education. Quote, no, please. We cannot release the only talent God has given us here. He, that is Randall, should let him finish and even collect more awards for his uncommon service, that is visual aids production, to our school. Or can he give us a substitute? And himself said no, unquote. These drawings produced in 1892 were mainly visual aid subjects, domestic and cultural materials, as well as colonial fashion materials, including colonial fashion items. According to J.K. Randall, quote, they are clearly well-executed images of creative observation unexpected of a boy at his level in the primary school, unquote. By the time he left school, 1844, he had produced a large number of drawings that formed the foundation of art practice, not only in Nigeria, but also in Africa. In 1895, J.K. Randall eventually took him to Lagos and enrolled him at the Caxton House Secondary School, where he graduated in 1899. Some people say 1900. His drawings and watercolor paintings in the secondary school, together with the primary school ones, and all the works produced before he traveled to London in 1920 for formal art education, all gave him the informal pioneership. He was here an informal pioneership of what he always referred to as his new art in Nigeria. During this time, he had already made himself a widely known artist who, however, was not yet celebrated by the colonial government in Nigeria. He had also affirmed his position as the only portraitist or artist in Africa. However, his acquisition of formal art education in London and Paris in 1922 finally made him an official pioneer of Western art in Africa. Aina Onabolu was also the pioneer art teacher. That is pioneer artist, sorry. Aina Onabolu was also the pioneer art teacher in Africa. And this, he informally started in 1914, Book of Art Knowledge in Nigeria. Nnamdi Azikiwe once commented on him. I have a lot of messages that I deal with because Dr. Azikiwe himself was art. Because without Azikiwe, there wouldn't be art. He was the person who single-handedly put art on the curriculum of the University of Nigeria. According to Nnamdi Azikiwe, quote, this pioneer art, that is Western art, or let me say, father of modern African art, waded through the polluted marshy stream of colonialism, disregarded the usually snobbing attitude of our colonial adversaries, and even ignored certain racist humiliations in his college in London, St. John's Wood. Chief Aina Onabolu has taught most of Nigeria's colonial, late colonial, and early post-independence politicians, among others. I know that nearly all my Igbo, that is Igbo, brothers living in Lagos during his active teaching period, including myself, were taught by him. Michael Opara, who became Premier of Eastern Nigeria after me, was one of his students, unquote. The above has made it clear. In our contemporary society, one can still find distinguished or notable Nigerians who were taught by Onabolu. One of these is Yusuf Grillo, the artistically and socially monarchic, as well as morally cultured embodiment of institutionalized art professionality in Nigeria. According to Grillo, quote, I was lucky to be taught by him, that is Onabolu, at the Christ Church Cathedral School from 1945 to 1946, which, as expected, attracted many Europeans, Randus associates, and legal politicians. One particular work in watercolor depicted the punitive destruction of Ijebu-Ode in 1892 by the British soldiers. Very unbelievably, this work was bought by the colonial government in Lagos at the instance of the residents, the colonial master resident in Lagos. Another solo exhibition that showed Onabolu as pioneer took place in 1915 in his Lagos residence. However, the above has made it clear. In our contemporary society, one can still find distinguished or notable Nigerians who were taught by Onabolu. One of these is Yusuf Grillo, the artistically and socially monarchic, as well as morally cultured embodiment of institutionalized art professionality in Nigeria. According to Grillo, quote, I was lucky to be taught by him, that is Onabolu, at the Christ Church Cathedral School from 1945 to 1946, which, as expected, attracted many Europeans, Randus associates, and legal politicians. One particular work in watercolor depicted the punitive destruction of Ijebu-Ode in 1892 by the British soldiers. Very unbelievably, this work was bought by the colonial government in Lagos at the instance of the residents, the colonial master resident in Lagos. Another solo exhibition that showed Onabolu as pioneer took place in 1915 in his Lagos residence. However, he had his major and well-publicized solo exhibition in 1920 from April 27 to 30 at the popular Empire Hall, Oil Mill Street, Lagos. This was the time that marked his departure, and he was going to London for further study. There was another, though 3-day solo exhibition at the Academy Julian, because Onabolu's study was sensationalized, being the first African to enroll at the college. He was encouraged to hold a solo exhibition that featured 15 works, 10 drawings, and 5 paintings in the college hall in the same 1922. According to Onabolu, quote, my exhibition brought heavy attendance, mainly because many just wanted to see that black boy who dared European creativity. They were, however, full of praise for my work, for my art, unquote. Onabolu's first group exhibition was in 1910 during an agricultural show in Lagos. He featured 4 works, drawings and paintings that promoted agriculture and stressed the dignity of farming and the beauty of Nigerian farm products, Western style. Yes, an art studio for his art professionalization and for tourism. The studio was brought to an international standard when it was relocated to its newly constructed house at Ocholake Street, Okeegba, Ebutemeta, in 1954. The studio was ceremoniously opened by W.T. Mackwell, the acting Inspector General. I wanted to say police, sorry, not police. In fact, I made a mistake in my draft last week. I said the studio was ceremoniously opened by W.T. Mackwell, the acting Inspector General of Education in Nigeria. Many Lagos dignitaries, including a representative of Oba of Lagos. I don't know whether it's at the but I have not done I know where I could get Oba of Lagos. Then Europeans and education officials attended the opening ceremony. This studio was This also eventually became a gallery, a tourist center, which the Europeans and Nigerian elite, as well as Lagos students, always visited. Aina Onabolu equally pioneered the use or the employment of a model for his practice. Following the tradition of institution St. John's Wood, he began to use volunteer models, young men and women, near his house or on the street. They were usually rewarded in cash, kind, or with material gifts. This was the late 1920s. It was not until 1930s that he began to have regular and paid part-time female models who began to pose nude for him. And these continued in the early 1950s. Memories of your husband, who, as you know, brought not only me, but also art to Africa. How very quickly time passes. Please, let's be happy together. That's from Kenneth Murray. Unquote. Know what I finished with this? Aina Onabolu himself never wavered in his conviction and utterances that he was, in fact, the pioneer of Western art in Africa. Very unfortunately, however, and despite the great honor given him by the National Gallery of Art in 1999, under the executive director, Dr. Chike Dike, and the strenuous supporting activities of Dr. Simon Ipakronye to this effect, by giving Onabolu an architectural monument through National Studios of Art. We are yet to give this great pioneer, who made himself a generalismo of modern art in Africa, a lasting, internationally vibrating and granite-based honor that will realistically immortalize his unsurpassed contributions. I'm happy that the Ipakronye, I knew all the politics that surrounded that thing. I wish Ipakronye, you know that. I'm happy that Ipakronye allowed himself to be used very vigorously and positively by Chike Dike, even in the face of scary intimidation from those who said that the land must not be released, from external forces that eventually agreed and cooperated with them before that place was built. We must not forget that Onabolu wanted government to take over his house, He said the thing should be taken over by the group for preservation and as a monument to his name. One is still waiting for action. Unfortunately also, I raised the above alarm about four decades ago. Yes. In my paper titled Defender of African Creativity and Onabolu, Pioneer of Western Art in West Africa. You know, as you put it in West Africa at that time, my research had not really gone very far. Part of my reaction is, quote, it's over 20 years. That's 1980s. It's over 20 years since Chief Aina Onabolu died. Yet, no satisfactory attempt has been made to realistically acknowledge his indispensable contribution to modern art tradition in Africa. Though during the Nigerian Festa, that is Second World Black and African Festival of Art and Culture, National Art Exhibition, Onabolu's works were very well prominently featured in the brochure. It is not fair to see that the biographical section of the same brochure simply refers to Onabolu as, quote, a pioneer portrait painter and artisan. That was all. I can't agree with them. I even wrote in the Guardian to that effect. I don't have proof. One should be responsible for this type of semi-complimentary renaissance of Onabolu, unquote. That was about 4 decades ago I wrote this thing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time that the Society of Nigerian Artists, SNA, and relevant others should put pressure on government and other hands, or make the government know the enviable uncommon role that Aina Onabolu played in the creative, nationalistic, and socio-cultural renaissance of not only Nigeria, but also Africa. This is what this conference should focus on. I am waiting. I am waiting. I am waiting. You are waiting.
I had a chance to have a deeper and more intimate knowledge of the man. And I insisted and compelled myself to volunteer these remarks, which are very simple but unusual. The first thing I want to say is that the Professor Emeritus's presentation shows two things. One of them, the notion of the communion of saints. He was able to outline and present the development and emergence of Aina Onabolu from mere presence in the primary school to becoming someone who was celebrated decades and decades after his death. And I want to say that Professor Oloidi could not have done that if it was not the same spiritual journey as Aina Onabolu. It takes a great man to recognize greatness in others. Yes. And I wish to pay tribute to do so. First element of my tribute by saying, sir, that he gave life in a different context to a notion in Christianity or the love of the communion of saints. And I refer to something that most of us who are adults be aware of. The Rotary Club talks about the worth of all occupations. And it used to be believed that if you read history, you could only be a teacher. If you read English, your bachelor's degree, you could only be a teacher. And I wish to protest and to state that there is a profession that is not well recognized. That is the profession of active history. By active history, I mean not the history of men, but the history of ideas and the evolution of thought in human society. Sir, thou art the historian of excellence. I'm trying to be as great as other people.